Will you pray with me? May the words of my lips and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So, wow is the main thing I've been thinking recently. But before I start the sermon, I'd just like to thank a few people for all the amazing stuff that's been happening. So I have basically been lying in bed for 3.5 weeks and contributed absolutely nothing to what has been happening, and all the services and the communications and the pastoral work that has been going on. In particular, I'd like to thank Alan, who's been just working so hard. He's like this conductor where all these different voices and musicians and readers and intercessors have come together to give us these beautiful services that has enabled us all to worship and see each other. And I've never seen him work so hard. So he's been working from like 5 or 6 in the morning until later into the evening. And also getting me meals in bed when I've been too weak to get out of bed, and all without a word of complaint. So I'm really grateful to him, also to Stella for the amazing communications work that she's been doing, and Wendy for the pastoral work and making sure that people without the communication of the computer and so on are not feeling isolated and have everything that they need. I've been just really humbled by it all. I'd also like to thank the musicians that have enriched our worship, and those showing, courage to use these new forms of media, the intercessors and the readers, and lay ministers, church wardens. We've got our very own Cobra team that have been coordinating this work. Thank you for being courageous enough to embrace a new way of being church, and thank you for inviting us into your studies and your kitchens and your sitting rooms and your homes generally, in order that we might be able to worship together. I'm sure this thanks that I'm saying is echoed by everybody. So to state the obvious, coronavirus has touched us all of our lives. Probably not in the same ways, though. Some of us have been affected financially or lost our jobs, and there's certainly members of our families, our close household, for whom that's been true. And I know how lucky I am, actually, and perhaps all of us are recognising the ways in which we are lucky. So I feel lucky that I have a husband and children here, especially when I was ill, and also lucky to have the house and the garden. This coronavirus has really enabled me to start counting my blessings better. It's been a funny time for me the last little while that I've been ill. I haven't really been able to focus on anything other than present. So the kind of ghosts of the past have disappeared, and the anxieties of the future too. And I know that I felt kind of held, and I wonder whether that's in part thanks to your prayers. So thank you for that. It's been in some ways a good time for me, because I've only been able to be still and know that I am and that God is. And I've been sleeping when I haven't had the fever or the cough. I've been sleeping better than I can ever remember. And I think because I haven't had all of those anxieties, consequently, having been so absent from like half of Lent, the whole of Holy Week, and all that's been going on in the world for the last month, I feel a bit unqualified to preach this Easter. I'm kind of emerging into a world that was so different to the one that I left. I believe that it is right to celebrate Easter, though. Some people have said maybe it would be good to wait until we are back together. But my theology is that Christ died for us on Good Friday and rose again on Easter Sunday, and that nothing can stand in the way of God's love, not even coronavirus, whatever virus or wars or pestilences, whatever dark place we're in, either individually or as a country, Christ is still risen. Listening to the Good Friday readings this year, I had a rather strange kind of image that came to me. I saw Jesus a bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger in that film Terminator. It was a very long time ago. I looked it up. It was 1984. But anyway, when I watched that film, I was a little bit horrified. I think I saw it at the cinema. And I was a little bit horrified by the way that the Terminator just kept on going. If you haven't seen the film, it's about a cyborg that comes from the future into the present, and he's trying to kill a particular woman for a particular reason. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would stop him. And you keep thinking, oh, he's grievously injured. He must die now. This must be the end. And the agony carries on, and the tension carries on in this film. And it is a strange analogy. But the readings of the Passion kind of brought up the same sort of sickening feeling that I remembered from when I watched a Terminator as a teenager. Jesus is kind of intent on loving the world, and his love just keeps going on, and the story keeps unfolding, and you kind of think, well, any normal human being at this point would surely seek self-preservation. Any normal person would just surely compromise a little bit at this point. Any normal person would not be able to forgive that sort of gut-wrenching betrayal and pain. But nothing takes him off course. He just carries on and on and on. Jesus just keeps on loving. Eventually, in both the Terminator and the Passion, it is finally over. The words in Passion, "It is finished," ring in our ears. And in a sense, there's a relief that tension and suffering is over. And in the Terminator, it also eventually ends with him dying. And in that film, there's a sense of relief because evil has been vanquished, and it is finally over. Although it actually turned out not to be over, because I think there's also Terminator 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But in the Passion, there's kind of a relief that the suffering is over, but then a deep sadness that evil has won, and love did not win. That every year is extraordinarily distressing. And it's only on Easter Day today where we have this message of hope that even in the darkest days, those days are no match for God, because our God is a God of love, and love is stronger than death. So we can have the hope even in the midst of this lockdown. Of course, the reasons for anxiety are many. People being laid off and the kind of difficulties and struggles that our little family has experienced. You magnify it through the whole nation, and it is a national crisis, of course. Then there's those that are grieving for loved ones, and those who are sick and who are dying, and those who are terrified of getting the virus. There are people who are lonely or isolated, and some of those people will be struggling with mental health difficulties, just amplifying the struggle. And then there are those that are working flat out, and in particular those in the NHS working flat out who are at the sharp end of this. There are a lot of people carrying heavy loads, and we need to pray for all of these people at this time. But I believe there are also opportunities. So I don't know what the figures are going to be, but we're measuring the death toll as a result of the virus. But the air pollution has just plummeted across the world, and we know that each year 4.6 million people die as a result of complications to do with air pollution. So surely some of those people that would have otherwise died because of that, hopefully they may not this year. Also, road traffic accidents. 1.35 million people a year die on roads across the world, and hopefully with less traffic, fewer people will be dying in that way. And of course, with climate change, we already have a lot of people dying each year as a result of the changes to do with climate change. And I'm hoping that this lockdown might be a new trend, might be something that changes, that helps us in this area too. Have you heard all these beautiful stories that have emerged about the earth healing itself? About fish being seen swimming in the clear waters in Venice, and like the Himalayas just emerging in India. People are seeing them for the first time in 30 years because the pollution has dropped. They're just majestic, awesome mountains emerging. Cities like Milan and Madrid and Paris, where there was this utter fog of smog the whole time, and now you can see the beautiful clear skies. Have you seen about the goats grazing on the green in Llandudno, and sheep having taken over that play park in Monmouth, where some of the sheep are having a little go on the roundabout, and dolphins swimming in the harbours in Sardinia, and swans returning to Venice. It's beautiful, some of the things we're seeing. And other utter miracles have happened, like the railways have effectively been renationalised, and companies who always told their staff that they couldn't work from home now find that it's suddenly possible. That magic money tree that didn't exist, suddenly it seems to be existing. And the NHS, which was being stripped in favour of private health care, we're now applauding it. Lots of people are learning to video conference and shop online and stream television and use social media for the first time. People have learned how to bake bread and make fresh pasta with their children in their homes. Some of these changes are bound to stay forever. And so the lockdown has made me ask the question, what sort of world do we want to live in? Because it feels like we've been powerless against all sorts of things. I don't think we wanted to live in a world with pollution and like perpetual busyness and rampant consumerism, and definitely not living in a world that can no longer sustain us. So I pray that it isn't business as usual when the lockdown ends. But most seriously, I think as a church we have questions to answer too. Have we been too obsessed with things of little value? Now, I said I've been a kind of lifetime insomniac, but not for the past month. But I did have one anxiety dream over the past month, and that was that two people from the congregation were telling me off because we were using the wrong hymn words. I think it must have been that first service before the musicians really got quite so involved. And so Alan found hymns from online, but invariably, they've got different hymnals. Anyway, it's irrelevant. But the point is, how pathetic is that? It's a pandemic. It's a pandemic, and I'm worrying about hymn words. I saw Russell Brand at Greenbelt this last year, and he had some challenges for us as Christians, and the bit I remember most is him saying, we're dealing with Christ, we're dealing with God in human form, we're dealing with transcending the material realm. That ain't something that I would undertake in a jumper. Sorry. So, Christ is risen. What does that mean to us? Are there trivial things that we need to let go of from now on? Starting with me, of course. We've let go of so much, not being able to meet together. But perhaps we need to reorientate ourselves and think about where Christ is leading us. Think more seriously about what Jesus, being risen from the dead, means for us. Make sure that we are the outward-looking Church of Christ. Perhaps we need to throw out the old jumpers. I mean, I think what Russell Brand was saying is it's no good being a bunch of cronies who are only speaking to ourselves and each other. So what are those things that we need to sort through, throw out of our closets? And what more appropriate clothing do we need to wear for serving the world today, especially today and tomorrow, when the pandemic is over and the world is changed and society might need us in different ways. I don't have the answers, but together we will discern them if we're following the risen Christ. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.